everybody. Welcome. Player 2 Press Start. I am killagreg. You can find me at killagreg17.
And I'm Dan. You can find me at the Polygon1.
You can find us,
the two of us,
on Twitter at Player2, PLAYRTWO.
And you can find us online at player2pressstart.com.
Please find us there. Leave comments.
You can also find us on iTunes.
Yes. But I would find us on Facebook or the website, because I would like to interact with people.
Or YouTube.
Yes, or YouTube.
Go leave a YouTube comment. The cesspool of the internet. Go contribute to it.
Nothing good happens on YouTube.
Except our videos.
Right.
So, Greg, what are we talking about today?
Today we are finally talking about Destiny. Proper. Here, I'm going to give you your space pen back. I don't want to mess it up. I'm going to get... This is my waving pen.
Okay.
So we did a Destiny beta episode, which was primarily just Dan talking.
Yammering on for about 45 minutes.
Because I just wasn't terribly interested, honestly. It was like, oh, Destiny's coming out. Yeah, that's something I'll check out. But as a whole, it wasn't something I was incredibly excited about. And then we also yammered on about it on our year-end review for quite a while.
Did we? I don't remember that.
Yeah. I wasn't planning on doing a Destiny episode, but we spent so much time talking about it then that I felt it really warranted it. It deserves a proper analysis rather than 15 minutes of us whining about the minutia, which we'll get to. So you have something to look forward to for that. But why don't you give a few facts about Destiny, like who made it, when it came out, stuff like that.
Well, Bungie released the beta over last summer. Was it August it came out?
Sounds about right.
And then it was released worldwide on September 9th, 2014. Released by Bungie and published by Activision.
Yep.
So this was a pretty big departure for Bungie, who had partnered with Microsoft for like 100,000 years for the Halo series.
Yeah.
This was a new franchise for them that they developed, and it was a kind of original property and completely different from what they had been doing previously.
Something I really respect, sort of, is that they actually teased this game in ODST.
Yeah, with like an in-game poster.
Yeah. So obviously Destiny was something they've been working on forever. Because ODST was before Reach, and that was it, right? But that's still like probably 5-6 years ago. That's huge. I guess that's the video game industry. Maybe that's how long it takes. But obviously Destiny was a real pet project for Bungie. And it was on both current gen consoles. I don't count the Wii U.
Yeah, it was on the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, PlayStation 3, and the PlayStation 4. It is not on the PC.
Is it? It's not?
It is not on the PC. There were questions about whether or not it would at some point end up on it. I have a feeling eventually it might, just so they can get more money out of people.
I don't know why it wouldn't.
Yeah, it seems like I could see that being a PC game.
Yeah, that seems very obvious to me, and it's also something I would really love to play on PC.
So you can break it and then explore.
Boom.
Which we'll get into later.
Which we'll get to. So,
well, how would you describe this game? Because this is a real hybrid.
Yeah. I think deep down, the thing it probably best compares to is Borderlands.
I would agree.
Gameplay-wise. Not tone, not style, or story even. But that sort of Diablo-esque loot-driven game is really what Destiny is at its core. You're doing missions, you're trying to get loot drops, they have raids, those are all like that sort of like dungeon crawler RPG thing. Destiny really is just this weird mishmash of all sorts of stuff. There's RPG elements, huge RPG elements. It's obviously a first-person shooter. There are light MMO elements to it.
Very light.
What else? Anything else?
It's not quite as straightforward as a Halo game. Like Halo was very Like, if you're considering like the story of the campaign, not the multiplayer, it's a very straightforward game. There's pretty much one way to get from point A to point B, and Destiny it has that, but there are elements of free roaming that you just don't exist in Halo.
Bungie. Halo sort of works more as a maze where there's a beginning and an end, and you have to get there. Destiny works more like a sandbox, where you are put into a world and things happen in it.
But not quite as sandboxy as like Grand Theft Auto.
No,
you don't have that much
I would
freedom.
not classify this game as open world, because the confines that you were put in are realistically very small. It's more sprawling than some games, but it would never. Borderlands has.
It's huge.
If you compared like a map in Destiny to a map in Borderlands, it would be a fifth of Borderlands. There are a million places for you to go in Borderlands, a million people for you to talk to. It's all one connected world. It's just huge and vast, and sometimes it feels empty. Sometimes that's a detriment.
Yeah.
Destiny always feels alive.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
There doesn't tend to be a lot of downtime. You get a little bit of that on Mars, for example. Mars is in this game is a desert world. It's pretty barren, and there's moments when you're traveling through where it's a little things seem far apart and kind of remote.
Yes.
But by and large, there's a lot going on most of the time, and to get from one bit of action to the next doesn't take that long.
So, Destiny sort of has three major, I would say, game segments. There is the story, which pretty much drives you through your first time through Destiny. It's a natural progression to level you up to the max level you get through experience. If you start at level 1 and play all the story missions all the way through, by the end of the story missions you're about level 20. So that's one key structure of Destiny, is the story. Levels 1 through 20 is designed for you to play the story. Then there is the sort of new game plus of sorts, which is designed from levels 20 to originally level 30, currently level 32 with the Crota's End expansion.
The Dark Below.
Oh, is that it? The
Yeah.
Dark Below. So that's sort of the second core part, and that's where I'm trying to get into the frame. The core part. And that's where, in my opinion, you get into the real meat of the game. In a weird way, that's when it becomes significantly more repetitive, but at the same time, the stuff you're doing is significantly more interesting.
And more important.
And then the third part is the Crucible, which is
your multiplayer.
Destiny's version of multiplayer.
Capture the flag.
PvP multiplayer. Yeah. Your Call of Duty, Halo, traditional PvP type stuff.
And I would say it is fairly comparable to what Halo is producing these days. I mean, obviously you have the nuances of Destiny built into that, but I would say by and large, if you've played Halo multiplayer, you would do fine with this, with little issue.
Relatively, but we'll get there.
I think you could pick it up quickly.
Yes.
You wouldn't master it without having played Destiny.
The levels feel very much like Halo multiplayer levels, but because Destiny, which is what we're going to talk about next, has different classes of player or characters to choose from, there's a real dynamic element to it that has been largely absent from Halo.
So do you think we should just give like the real quick plot summary here? There's not a lot as far as the main story goes.
Let me get to that in one moment.
Okay.
I just want to go over one more basic thing before we go into that, but that's where we're heading next.
All right.
So the other core thing about Destiny is player class. In Destiny, you can choose from 3 different players. There are the Titan, which is your damage sponge / damage dealer. There is the Hunter, which is sort of your sniper type class.
Sniper, scout, assassin sort of character.
Yep. And your Warlock, which is supposed to be a sort of like space wizard of sorts.
A magic user.
A magic user, exactly. deep down they all play very similar, but there are the thing about Destiny is the minutia is what makes or breaks this game all over the place, and the little differences between those classes, by the time you get to the end game raids and stuff, make a huge difference.
Like for example, the assassin class might have a triple jump option, whereas a different class might have a jetpack instead. So, I mean, you still have the ability to jump around in the environment, but the way you do it and the specific pros and cons of that ability definitely make a difference.
Right. And there are different statistics on each character. So a Titan, it's what is it? Toughness, recovery, and agility. Is that it?
I think so.
I don't know if toughness is the first one, but it's the appropriate word, so we'll go with it. So the Titan's toughness is very high, which means he takes a tremendous amount of damage, but he moves slow, and his health recovers extremely slow. I've played very little of the Hunter. What's the health situation, like movement speed and stuff for
the Hunter is nimble. You have to pay attention because if it can go south real quickly, but if you can manage to get to cover, you'll usually be okay. So it's kind of like you jump in, you do some damage, you jump out, sort of thing. Or like you have to be like on your toes, which seems appropriate for the character and what they're asking you to do. Just like in Borderlands, you can either play up close and do like melee attacks and have that kind of stuff, like up close where the action is, but sort of maybe try and be invisible or try and stay hidden. Or you can do really long distance stuff. It's good at that as well, with like sniper rifles and that kind of thing.
And then the third class, the Warlock, they have very low toughness, so they get hurt very quickly. They go down very quickly. But their recovery is incredibly high. So yes, they get hurt, but after only a couple seconds of hiding, they're back to full health. Where the Titan, it takes a long time to get back to full health. And they also have very high agility, so they can maneuver around the battlefield much faster.
It also has, like, for example, they have a very unique skill in their skill tree where they can revive themselves if they go down. If they get killed in battle. You can revive your players if you're still alive and you can get to them. Being able to revive yourself can be a game-changing skill.
Yeah.
I mean, that can make or break a run in something.
So, for example, I primarily play as a Warlock. I have a Titan on the PS4, and I have a Hunter that I barely use on the Xbox. But I have two, at this point, level 32 Warlocks. And each class has its own subclass. So for the Warlock, its two subclasses are the Voidwalker and the Sunsinger. And one of them...
we just have to tell you right now, there's a lot of jargon and terminology with this game, and it is absurd.
Yeah, we'll try not to get too weird about it. So I get to make the choice whether I want to be a damage dealer, which is the Voidwalker, or I can be a sort of recovery specialist as the Sunsinger. And then throughout the course of the game, you get different upgrades that will facilitate one or the other. I have one helmet that helps my Voidwalker. I do more damage. I get my Nova Bomb faster, and that does that. The other one lets me recover teammates faster, and then you have to make that switch. And that realistically is what makes this game so dynamic, is that there are a lot of decisions to be making.
There are. Like for me, for the Hunter, so my two main subclasses are Gunslinger and Blade Dancer. Blade Dancer is designed for melee combat and to be extremely deadly and quick. It has a lot of invisibility options, whereas the Gunslinger doesn't really have those available for the most part. But here's a big difference, though. It's like your main superpower that you get with each one of these subclasses. With a Hunter, as Gunslinger, you have this golden gun that does an incredible amount of damage, and it's great against bosses. You can use it against regular characters, but it's, that's kind of a waste. You want to use it against the big guys. But the rest of his abilities are a little lackluster. On the flip side, the Blade Dancer, who's designed for close quarters combat with regular enemies, is great at that. But his special abilities are terrible against the final bosses. Because the game is not designed for you to get that close to them, so you'll just get killed immediately.
Yeah, in fact, they almost all have like a specialized melee attack that will down you in one hit.
So that's the trade-off, you know. Do you want this longer distance attack, but your general abilities and stuff are not quite as strong, or do you want to be stronger when you're moving around the battlefield and be able to fight regular guys? And those you can switch back and forth at any time, but it's kind of it can reset things, and you have to be strategic about which one you're using and when.
So that's sort of the core of this game. I think the best course of action for this podcast is maybe to break it up into those 3 segments I talk about. We can talk about early game, levels 1 through 20. That's where we'll discuss the story and stuff.
Okay.
We'll talk about late game, and then we'll talk briefly about the Crucible, because honestly, you and I don't have a tremendous amount of experience.
We're not experts. We've played enough of it to understand the mechanics and everything else, but we're not great at it.
Yeah. So let's talk about early game and the story.
Okay.
You played the game alone initially.
I played the whole story portion by myself.
Right. A lot of people complain about this game. Their biggest complaint seems to be the story. That's the only sort of universal, overarching, legitimate complaint about this game that isn't aggressive nitpicking, in my opinion.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
So we had 2 different experiences with the game. Why don't you explain how you found the story when you went through it?
Well, I didn't really know what to expect, and I was pretty open-minded to the whole thing. Destiny strikes a chord with me personally that I find very appealing. It takes itself seriously, but every now and then has moments of humor to kind of break the tension a little bit. But the general, in a nutshell, story, which is the bulk of it for this game, is that a couple of 100 years in Earth's past, the game takes place in the future. So
way in the future.
So the game takes place way in the future. In the future's past, which is still our future, this entity, it's this big round ball that looks like a small moon.
Which is stupid.
Yeah. It was encountered on Mars. This thing is called the Traveler. And the Traveler basically ushered in a golden age of technology for humanity, which basically allowed humans to spread out across the entire solar system and terraform planets like Venus and Mars. And then, so that was our golden age. But unfortunately, following in the wake of the Traveler was the quote-unquote darkness.
Awful name.
They could have done some of this stuff better. But the general gist of the darkness is that it's... Well, do we even know? It's so vague.
We know next to nothing. Everything Dan has said so far is given to you in the opening credits, essentially. Like the opening cinematic.
Basically.
Remember this, because we're going to get back to it. But, like, these are the only facts you are given.
Pretty much.
Is what Dan just said.
And what you observe through playing, like things you pick up from the environment. There are different groups of aliens. You have the Vex, who are these time-traveling sentient robots. You have the Cabal, who are kind of these warlords, very big on military. You encounter them on Mars.
The Cabal are very similar to the Brutes in Halo.
Definitely, that's a good comparison. You have the Fallen, who they're a little hard to peg down exactly, although I would compare them most closely to, like, the Elites.
Yes, they are
Elites and Grunts, kind
everything
of.
about them is
Halo.
very Covenant-esque. To the Elites and the Grunts, like you just said, they just feel and act very similar to early Halo enemies.
And then you have the Hive, who are sort of a hybrid between, to make a Halo reference, between kind of like the Flood and the Covenant. If you're able to combine them like into a class, and they are, you encounter them on the Moon, you encounter them on Earth. Some of these you sort of encounter the game takes place on multiple planets on the Moon, and you'll encounter these different groups in different circumstances. Sometimes they'll be fighting each other because they're not allied together. And they are somehow connected to the darkness, which is a force that has basically swept in on our solar system and pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. We have one final city left in Russia somewhere. The Traveler, which is no longer communicating with us, has it basically floats above the city and somehow is protecting it. There are giant walls around the city, and that's basically the last bastion of humanity. There have been epic fights against all these alien races in the past, and when the game starts, basically a small floating robot similar to 343 Guilty Spark revives you as a guardian, who is someone that has previously died and is now imbued with the essence of the traveler.
The light of the traveler.
The light. Yeah, and there's this constant dichotomy between the light and the dark. And what does that really mean necessarily? Are we really the good guys? Like, questions like that, which are subtle. There's so much subtlety to the story in this game.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue is that there's sort of this inherent mystery to the game. They don't actually present you with a mystery, really. They're just giving you a task. Look, you got to go fight these dudes for the traveler. The traveler needs help. These are the traveler's enemies. Go and get them.
It's basically like small missions over and over and over again.
Right. And as the game progresses, there's like a slight air of mystery to it, but you feel right from the get-go that like there's something you're supposed to be figuring out.
Yeah.
But I guess minor spoilers. They don't answer any of those questions. And they're questions that you propose yourself. It's not like they said, hey, there's this big mystery, you have to figure it out, and then at the end, there was no resolution. It's more just that the design of the game doesn't give you anything to, like, latch onto.
There's no closure to anything you might encounter. Like, you'll see one throwaway line somewhere. Maybe it's in an item description or a weapon description, or you can unlock these things called grimoire cards through things that you do in the game, which, if you go to Bungie's website, you can then read the card, and they have little snippets of information, history, or conversations between characters. Those are the things that, frankly, fill in a lot of this game.
Yes.
Through just like scraps, little fragments of information, and it's like, imagine if somebody took like a tenth of Wikipedia and said, hey, you got to figure out the history of the universe based on having so little information.
And, excuse me, the issue with the grimoire cards is that, first off, a large majority of the story of this game is taken out of the game and put online. There is no way to access grimoire cards through the physical game of Destiny. I can't be playing on my Xbox, look up the grimoire cards. I have to have my phone or my iPad or my computer. I have to take myself away from the game to go and find out more. Now, theoretically, I'm not opposed to that. Part of what I like about Destiny, part of what I love so much about Fez, Shadow of the Colossus, stuff like that, is that there is a story to be told that is not inherent, that the community has to come together to figure out. I love going to Reddit every day and thinking and like talking about theories that people have come up with about stuff that may still be left in the game, what grimoire cards mean, all that stuff. So I don't totally hate the idea, but so much of the game, it feels like the physical story was ripped out of the game and thrown online.
And I think Fez is in this context of what we're talking about right now, Fez is a perfectly appropriate comparison. And the difference is that Fez feels like a string of breadcrumbs, a trail of breadcrumbs that have been left for you to figure it out, or figure out more of it. Like, it feels intentional. Whereas with Destiny, it doesn't feel like a trail of breadcrumbs. It just feels like scraps that have been left behind.
Yes. Fez and Shadow of the Colossus feel like they have left precise things for you to follow.
Like, intentionally.
Destiny feels like stuff was left lying around. Which I know is just another way of saying exactly what you just said.
That's okay. It's a good point.
Yeah.
It should be reiterated.
So, I found the story to be unsatisfying. But, actually, wow, going way back to my original point, you understood that the story that was being told, and that by the end of it, the game was coming to a conclusion, correct? The entire game you're working towards finding the Black Garden.
Which, frankly, you don't even know what the hell it is.
Nobody's like, oh, here's what's in the Black Garden. So by the time you get there, now the Black Garden is very cool looking, but there is no like legitimate epicness to what you're doing,
or why you're doing it,
or why you're doing it.
You're just doing it.
You just sort of get there, like you do everywhere else in this game.
Yeah.
It's just it's like, well, that's when we're going next. All right.
Like it's one thing like we have to go here to turn on this ancient like Earth, artificial intelligence to help us fight this war. Okay, that makes sense. We have to go to this place called the Black Garden for some reason. What? Makes no sense. There are some things in this game that make more sense than others. The ending of this game and going to the Black Garden makes no sense. You don't know what it is. You don't know why you're going there. It's nonsense.
But when you got there and when you beat the whatever it was, there's not even an end boss really.
It's like 3 mini bosses and that's it.
Yeah. You knew the game was over.
I knew that like that was the end of the story. I didn't know exactly what would happen after that. Like I wasn't when I got to the Black Garden, and I beat it. I didn't expect there to be more after it. Okay. And but you did. You were completely flummoxed by it.
Yeah.
And thought like, what the hell? This is it? This is the game? And I get that. Like that's a perfectly appropriate response because I don't really know why I thought that was it. I guess I felt like, well, I felt like I played this for enough time, and I know there's a bunch of multiplayer. I mean, Halo games are relatively short at this point.
That's true.
I guess I thought it was kind of like along those lines.
So Dan played it alone, and he understood when he got to the Black Garden, that was the end of the game. I played it because I bought it several months after Dan. He and I played it together, the entire story mission. When I got to the Black Garden, I was ready for the next mission. It was like, all right, we killed that amorphous blob in the sky. Let's go. All right, we beat the Black Garden. Where's the next part? And a cutscene played. And, I mean, I will always remember this. Dan was just like, you know that's the end of the game, right? And honest to God, I thought he was joking. I did. I thought you were messing with me. It just didn't make any sense to me that was the end of the game. I felt so incredibly unsatisfied by that experience.
And you had like a visceral reaction of, I hate this game. This is idiotic.
It literally affected me for days. I thought about it.
Like how cheesed you were.
Yeah.
Like,
not months, but like days later, I was still texting Dan just how angry I was. It was like, I can't believe it. What was that?
That's the end of the game. That's the end of Destiny.
Here's the thing. The story is the least interesting part of Destiny.
I don't necessarily agree with that. But you can finish your point.
The game of Destiny. The story is interesting. I'm intrigued. I wish they had done more. And myself and Dan and people in the Reddit community, we're trying to figure it out. I read a great thing today on the... I'm going to say a bunch of words that don't make any sense to anybody who doesn't know it. A great thing today on Rasputin the Warmind and what really happened with the collapse when the Traveler let out its light. It's all insane, but it's there if you fish for it. So the story is interesting. But to me, I sort of saw this as a single-player game, and I left the single-player feeling terribly unsatisfied. But now, that was level 20, okay? At level 20, something happens in Destiny. You stop getting regular experience and leveling up. The only way to level up in Destiny after level 20 is to raise your light level. The more you talk about this, the stupider it sounds.
Everything sounds idiotic.
The only way to raise your light level is to get better armor. So
the light number is attached to each particular piece of armor, and you've got a helmet, gauntlets, boots, and chest armor.
Yes.
And each one has a specific light number.
So your progression stops being about the amount of enemies you kill and more about how you spend your time. There is a lot of peripheral things in Destiny to be doing that aren't the story missions, and that's where the real meat of the game is. I lost my point.
No, so you can do what are called like patrol missions, which are simple. Like if you've played GTA, it's a lot of like the really dumb like piddly things you do in there that get you whatever. It's short, brief stuff to give you a little bit of experience or materials or whatever else. Those are minimal and relatively quick. You've got strikes, which are more substantial missions, I guess, which you can. They're very repetitive.
There's 5 of them on the Xbox.
Yeah.
And I think there's a 6th one on the PlayStation 4, but I have not gotten there yet. And
they're sort of structured a certain way. There's usually one main guy at the end that you're supposed to get to. There's something in the middle which you have to complete. There's like a mini battle in the middle, basically, which you have to get to. Once you finish that, you go fight the end boss. So that's a little bit more time consuming than a patrol mission. So you're gonna earn different stuff and more stuff for doing that.
I think the strikes are made to take about half an hour. High level players will bust through them much quicker because all the unimportant stuff you just skip. You just drive past all the enemies.
Yeah. Because you want to ultimately, you want to get to the end. That's when you're going to get the most payoff, and you want to complete it. And so you'll have fun beating the final guys because they're challenging, but you skip past all the piddly guys because they don't matter, and you can just get past them. They're not essential to the mission.
Yeah.
And so at the end, there'll be a loot drop, and that's where you'll get material to upgrade your armor. You'll get currency to buy other things. You'll get new armor or weapons, which sometimes you'll get really lucky, and you'll get things that are very extremely rare or exotic, which might have special powers or abilities, or be very strong, or have really good like defensive abilities or whatever. And so that's where that's when you get to that screen, it's like, oh, what am I going to get? What's my reward?
Yeah, that's why you keep playing Destiny.
The loot.
That screen.
The loot.
And they have done a wonderful job with that screen. They know that's what people want.
Yeah.
So
you want your loot fix.
So they throw up an end mission splash. That's just sort of like, here's the progression you made this strike. We know you're super interested in it.
Mm-mm.
And then they'll flip to the next page. This is the loot page. And they'll give you some basic stats. It's like, hey, here's how many dudes you killed. Here's how many assists you had. Here's how many times you died. And then next to that are 2 boxes next to each name. And those boxes can be filled with loot. And it sort of spins for a second.
Yeah.
And there's like this wait. And it's just like, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? What am I going to get? And then it's just super satisfying, like thump, 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 as that like each box fills individually. And you get to see what other people, it's a super satisfying feeling, and you get jealous when somebody else gets something really rad and you got junk, and you feel really awesome when you get that thing. The design, I could talk about the design of that page for half an hour. It is.
Please don't.
It is a transcendent piece of video game making. That splash right there. So what I learned while playing now is that the story is not where the game really shines. It's really at this end game stuff. Specifically with its first raid, the raid that comes on the disc.
I just want to cut in and make one quick point about the story. To make an analogy that I was just thinking of. So you can't have a discussion about Destiny without complaining about it. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
It is a wonderfully delightful, terrible game. And it's a hot mess, but it's so much fun. And so I constantly find myself thinking like, oh, this would be better if they did this. And literally so does every other Destiny player. If you go on the Reddit community, they are just bananas about trying to improve this game. And some things they get, and some things, 99% of what they want, they don't get. But to get a slightly better grasp on the problem with the story is because there are a lot of games that don't spell it out for you, but it's still enjoyable and they do it successfully, and this game doesn't. And what I think might be the problem is they make so much of it inaccessible and distant. You can't grab it. You can't get to it. And so I want to compare this just for a second to Dishonored. Because with Dishonored, you have all of this backstory that's littered throughout the entire game. And you can learn so much if you want to take the time.
Yeah.
There's like books and all this other stuff. There's
journals.
There's so much about the game that if you're interested and you want to take the time, you can. And if you don't, you can skip past it, and it's your choice. But you know that if you skip past it, you're missing the story.
That's a good comparison.
With Destiny, all of that like in-game littered content is just not there. The best you get is like a one-line throwaway in the description of an item.
Right.
In-game. And so you can get more by going to the Grimoire cards, or going now to the Destiny wiki, or Reddit, or wherever else. You shouldn't have to. That stuff should be in the game to give you an additional reason to keep playing and enjoy it. And like feel like you're getting a fulfilling experience.
Right. For example, throughout Destiny there are 60 dead ghosts that you can find.
The ghosts are those little robots that were at the beginning. They're your companion. They're kind of like Cortana.
Exactly. When you pick up or find a dead ghost, you get a Grimoire card. There is no immediate payoff for going out of your way to find those ghosts.
Mm-mm.
I don't understand why they didn't just put the Grimoire cards in the game and online.
Yeah, or on loading screens or wherever else, because there's a lot of loading screens.
Loading screens, yeah, that would have been awesome. Missed opportunity.
Yep.
If you're gonna go out of your way to find those like stupid little dinklebutts all over the place, then they need to reward you immediately.
Just to make that clear, he's calling it a dinklebutt because Peter Dinklage did the voice of your ghost, so they call it Dinklebot, and Greg is calling it Dinklebutt, just so that makes sense to people.
I took an abbreviated dumb thing and made it even dumber.
That's okay.
Thus is the way of Destiny. So, it's poor. Gaming is escapism. I think personally, deep down inside, the reason people play games is because it's an easy way to feel like you achieved something without actually achieving much. This isn't universal, but I think in general that's why people do certain things, especially RPGs like Skyrim and Borderlands. You can spend 3 hours in Skyrim, feel like you've accomplished a whole bunch without exerting much effort.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of like tickles the human brain in the right way so that they can relax while still internalizing that they accomplished something. Video game makers need to understand that. And you would think in Destiny they would by the way they give out loot. The loot system is brilliant in Destiny. But that's why everybody feels so dissatisfied with the Grimoire cards. When you work so hard to accomplish something and then it's a pain in the butt to go find what you accomplished. And then even when you accomplish that, half of it is cryptic anyway. Yeah. It's not like you get the answer. You get another question. And that really irks people the wrong way, I think.
And like, so here's a perfect example of that. In Destiny, so you have all these different planets that you go to, but there's also on Earth, there's the Tower. The Tower is a social area where you can go and check different merchants, or there's various factions and you can participate in them and buy things from them, and it's sort of like it's like the Citadel from Mass Effect too.
In fact, I call it the Citadel most of the time.
So once a week, this alien named Zur shows up at the Tower. Originally there was no explanation, no rhyme or reason as to why he was there. People just realized, oh, there's this weird guy in the corner that sells weird stuff. And there's really like no explanation. He's Zur, Agent of the Nine. So you don't know who he is. You have no information on him. You don't know who the Nine are. And in the game itself, you never find this out.
Right.
It's never made clear.
And then once you get the Grimoire card on the 9, there are 9 things written on it. Every one of them is a riddle.
So, like, that's just a perfect example of, like, cryptic stuff built into more cryptic stuff. It's just, like, layers of confusion and lack of information to explain what you're dealing with.
It's awful.
So, in a nutshell, just to sum that up, the story is a hot mess. It has fragments of something that could be extremely exciting.
Fragments of brilliance.
Yeah. I'm at this point, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to pull this together eventually, but that's based only on their reputation previously. If they just deep six this game and the next one, I'm going to be real disappointed in them. They have the potential to do something amazing, and have an amazing property that could go for many, many more games. They need to get this story situation nailed down. It's ridiculous.
Wow, we're going to linger on the story for a while, but there's other points I want to make. The other issue that a lot of people have with it is that in promotional material for Destiny, there were not even hints, but like large chunks of gameplay, both story and otherwise, that are no longer in the game. There's a character in that we actually do see in Destiny. His name is Crow. They never mentioned that his name is Crow.
Oh.
He is the brother and the advisor to the queen of what's called the Awoken. We won't go into details about it, but they're a sort of other faction that hang out in the
asteroid belt.
In the asteroid belt,
which is past Mars, between Mars and Jupiter. They're basically on the edge of the potential for human civilization.
In promotional material for Destiny, there is an interaction between Crow and your character that doesn't appear anywhere in the game, and it seems to involve real plot points.
I didn't know any of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this was literally years ago. This was like the E3 presentation in March of 2013 or something. So a lot of people speculate that one of two things happened. This game cost $500 million to make. Activision was just like, hey, you need to hurry up. We need to make our money back on this sometime this year, this decade. So they just scrapped a bunch of stuff, relegated all of it to the Grimoire cards, and just put out what they could. That, to me, seems like the most plausible thing.
From a business perspective, it makes sense.
Well, the other one makes even more sense from Activision perspective. What other people speculate is that large chunks of the game were cut out to be used exclusively as downloadable content. The game was costing too much, so they ripped out Crota's End and the next DLC, House of Wolves, which is primarily focused around Crow and the Awoken, and they're releasing it for $20 a piece so they can recoup some of their money.
I've also heard that wasn't there somebody that was related to the game's development that left?
Yes.
And so they kind of basically had to rewrite the story?
I believe the lead writer left about a year before the game was put out. And unfortunately, they also had beef with Marty O'Donnell, the composer.
Oh, really?
Yup. He left around the same time as that writer. And it's a real shame because the music that he makes for Bungie is...
So did he do the music for this?
He did.
Okay.
A large majority of it.
The music in this game is incredible.
It's absolutely incredible. But apparently a lot of the contention between Marty O'Donnell and Bungie was the influence that Activision was having over the game and how it was affecting his work, and he didn't like just the corporate culture of what Bungie was doing. A lot of it is speculation, but none of those things are good. Like, you can be upset about every one of those. That the game was rushed, that it was purposely neutered to sell as DLC, or that the writer left because the game wasn't coming together the way they want. Those are all, like, really bad things for the game, and any or all of them sort of explain the Grimoire cards and how lackluster the story is. Also, they made a very interesting choice in dehumanizing Dinklebutt. They have clips of him from a long time ago reading... I mean, it's Peter Dinklage reading these lines.
He's a great actor.
He's a great actor, where your ghost has, like, a real spirit to him, and he's sort of, like, a little bit snarky and kind of, like, jabby, but fun to be around, and he makes jokes, and he doesn't have quite as a metallic feel to him as the actual game incarnation does. So, like, it just sort of feels like this game as a whole had some of its spirit ripped out.
But the end result with him is that he's just kind of flat.
Yes. And a lot of people complain about that. He seems sort of monotone and like he just sort of doesn't care. And a lot of that backlash went on to Peter Dinklage, which is not fair. I think that was all Bungie's decisions. But that's me. Let's talk about Vault of Glass.
Okay.
So to get back to my previous point, flashback half an hour ago, to me, the real ending of Destiny is the Vault of Glass. Um, it it does not have incredibly strong story ties. You know, it doesn't provide for you the ending that you want for the story, but
from a gameplay perspective,
Vault of Glass is a work of art.
It really is. It's majestic.
It is. That's proper. It is majestic. So Vault of Glass is a raid. For those who don't know, raids are high level, typically MMO type things that must be completed with other players and is typically impossibly difficult. When Destiny first came out, I mean, it was like a huge deal when people were finally completing Vault of Glass. On normal, now there's a hard mode. Completing Vault of Glass on normal in under like 6 hours. It was like, oh my god, somebody did Vault of Glass in 5.5 hours. Did you guys see that video?
And part of it too is that there's no direction. Unlike your normal strikes or missions or like campaign missions or whatever else, there's no direction. You had the first people that did this, that were kind of forging the path for the rest of us, they had to just figure it out by trial and error.
They were pioneers.
There's complicated puzzles. There's convoluted paths to go through. I mean, this one especially. There's another raid that's available through DLC,
which we'll talk about in a minute.
But this raid, like, the beginning part is a mystery to begin with, although I think that one probably wouldn't be too difficult to figure out. But then you have to go through this very complex series of caves and tunnels and kind of into the belly of Venus.
Yeah.
Venus?
It is Venus.
Venus.
And it feels
massive.
It feels massive. It feels beautifully thought out.
Organic.
And it's disorienting.
Yeah. Especially with all these cave tunnels. Like, they're claustrophobic, and like they make all these turns all the time, and you can very quickly like lose your team if you're not sticking together.
Yeah. And teamwork is the most important part of this. It should also be mentioned that Bungie chose not to add matchmaking to Vault of Glass. You have to go offline, find other people to play with. Now, their reasoning, and I understand this, is that the Vault is very complicated. You want to make sure you're doing it with the right people, and you want to make sure that you can communicate, they're all the right level, stuff like that. We can't just do random matchmaking because you're going to get stuck with people who are going to jump out, you're going to get stuck with people without microphones, so on and so forth. I understand that perspective. However, by doing it online, it's not much better. It's just more time consuming.
I understand. I get that argument, but it's a terrible argument, because it would be so easy for people to go down a big checklist screen and say, "Yeah, I've got this gun. I'm this level. I have a mic. I'm a hunter. This is my preferred subclass." It would be so easy for somebody to pick all of their stuff and be like, "Match me up with the people that need this person."
Right.
It would be incredibly easy.
Well,
and I'd be honestly.
I don't know how easy it is. Like, we don't know how to write code. Some people, Master Chief Collection still hasn't gotten their matchmaking right, and that came out 6 months ago. It might be hard to do. Maybe they wish they had, but they don't. They were never like, we couldn't nail this down. Sorry, guys. It was like, we chose to do this.
Because it's getting into an online game on a PC is so easy. You look at the list of stuff, you look at the ping, you pick one maybe that has a description that's appropriate for you, and you jump in. It's easy. And it's like, sometimes it seems like on a console, it's like it's either random matchmaking or nothing.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a better way to do it. If the community can rally together to come up with a third party outside the game, ghetto way of doing this, Bungie could have figured this out. They could have figured a way out, even if it's just the same mechanism built into the game, so I don't have to go to some website and fiddle around with sending invites and typing in people's Xbox Live names and stuff. Like, it's obnoxious.
Yeah, it is. It's frustrating and awful, and even sometimes when you find a group, it still takes forever, and there's no worse feeling in the world than jumping into a group when the group just is incapable of finishing the raid. This raid takes real cooperation and real know-how and high-level players. And sometimes you get some rando in there who is ill-equipped
An
to
idiot.
take the vault.
I'll be harsh. Sometimes you literally are just playing with idiots that don't know what they're doing, have never done it before, pretend like they do, and jump feet first into this when they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And then you got to carry them or kick them, and most people are too polite to kick somebody.
It's one of those things where, like, you just can't do it. You need to get experience. You have to be very humble at first. You have to find somebody who's willing to take an inexperienced player through. You have to do that a couple times. Then you start to feel at least a little bit of confidence to do it on normal, without admitting how awful you are. Then you bump it up, and then you're fresh again. You're totally new, because the hard level is infinitely more difficult than the normal.
You have to know what you're doing on hard.
Yes. At this point, normal is something I just do for fun. It takes me half an hour. It's like not even a thing. I could probably do it with one or two other people. I still get stuck on hard sometimes. Last night I was doing a raid. We got stuck at the third challenge. It just wasn't working. You have to get out, and you can spend hours doing it sometimes and just have no result, which is a little disheartening.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to talk about the raid? I guess it's just important to know that, like, it's very obvious that real love was put into this raid.
Into Vault of Glass.
Into Vault of Glass.
This is the one that comes with the game when you first buy it. The next raid, which is the final thing you do in the Dark Below DLC. There's a number of levels, and then ultimately you do Crota's End. It is much different than the Vault of Glass.
Yeah.
It's shorter. It's more straightforward. It's in some ways easier because it's quicker. It's more of a brute force sort of thing. Like,
yeah.
It's more about, like, power and strength and your weapons. Whereas Vault of Glass is a little more about strategy and thought. It's more thoughtful.
Yeah.
There are aspects of Crota's End that are interesting and that I enjoy. But if you had to compare these two raids, I mean, Crota's End doesn't even compare, which is a bummer because it's a DLC. Like, it shouldn't be junk. You paid extra to play it.
Yeah. It feels rushed. It doesn't have that, like, what's the right word? It doesn't...
Charm.
It doesn't have that charm that the Vault of Glass has. It feels like 3 totally stitched together rooms. You beat the first room, you go to the second room. You beat the second room, you go through some doors, you beat the third room. That's kind of the end of it. There's little things in between. But Vault is completely connected. Like, from start to finish, you can see your progression all the way down these caverns into the belly of the beast. Whereas with Crota, at the end of the first room, you, like, go into this big shiny light and you're teleported somewhere.
Yeah. And that's not the first time that happens, right?
It is. Oh, no.
Well, I mean, it's not the last time is what I meant to say.
No, it is. After you get teleported there, you beat the bridge.
When you cross the bridge, isn't there another light?
No, you go into the doors, those big doors. We always kill ourselves afterwards because strategically it makes more sense to kill yourself there.
All right, fine. That's...
But it still feels very segmented, and it's just sort of like you get this sort of
disjointed,
like horde mode vibe to it.
Yeah.
Like it feels like firefight because you're just like, do this room, okay, move on. Do this room, okay, move on. Oh, you beat Crota. You're at the end of it. You're done.
It's also a lot of fighting regular or mostly regular enemies, whereas Vault of Glass has some pretty gigantic robots that you fight.
Several completely unique things, and even what's so cool about Vault is there's like this inherent time travel element to it. So even the regular enemies that you fight, are modified versions of the regular ones you fight outside of the Vault of Glass.
So some of them look more futuristic, and some look like they're from the distant past.
Exactly.
And you sort of see the evolution in their design.
Right. You get to see, like, the original Vex. You know the Vex that you fight normally, and then you also get to see future Vex. And it's super cool.
And they don't I mean, I guess this could be inherently assumed by the name Vault of Glass, maybe. But there's a theory that the whole thing is a prison for the guy, the big gigantic robot you fight at the end, whose name is Atheon, and like that's just cool.
That's cool.
That's fun,
and it makes sense.
And it looks amazing at the end. There's all these like weird translucent like crystal things that form this like geometric structure in the air, and like towards this big platform where Atheon is kind of holding down the fight from his end. It's also like complicated in a challenging but interesting way, and like one person, like you'll start to like lose your vision in some portions of Vault of Glass, and another guy will have a tool that he can pick up which will restore it, but you have to be within a certain distance of him. So it's like you have to work together to do things, but stay close, and like everybody has to like be on their game and like be paying attention and do their job. Like if they have a job, they have to do it. In Crota's End, it's largely shoot this.
Yeah, it's like, hey, everybody, shoot that. Okay, we're done now. Shoot this.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done now. Shoot this. The other issue I have with Crota's is that it's not so much. Most of the enemies in it are not like smart. It's just it doesn't require a ton of teamwork. They are all just damage sponges. It takes a lot of effort to kill everything because everybody needs to focus fire it. Which is fine, but like in I'm losing my voice. In Vault of Glass, like in order to defeat the enemy at the end, you have to like you have to get your teamwork together. Certain requirements have to be met. There is no way to just brute force anything in the Vault of Glass. One person always has to be, holding the relic, or X person has to be. Thank you. You have to have gone through the portals to come out with, Time's Vengeance, which does triple damage to Atheon at the end. The whole thing just has this real, like, elegant, cooperative finesse to it. And Crota is just, you bang your head against the wall, sometimes the wall collapses, sometimes you die.
Here's the other issue with Crota's End, is that through the whole DLC that you've gotten, they make him sound like he's going to be this epic badass. And, like, you even have to, like, destroy his soul at one point. And there's this, at the tower, the social area I mentioned before where all the merchants are, occasionally you get visitors there. At one point, the queen had an emissary that she was there, and you could do missions to earn specific gear that the queen was offering. When when the Dark Below came out, Eris Morn showed up at the tower. And she is a former Guardian who, with a bunch of others, basically attempted to kill Crota previously. Her team got wiped out, and she was lost down in the depths of the Hellmouth, which is this gigantic
maw.
Yeah, it's like a maw city that the Hive have built into the moon. She had to survive down there for years on her own, and she is now the rep. Basically, she finally managed to escape. And she's come back to the tower. She offers gear and other stuff that you can use to make yourself better, so you can do better at these missions. And she's constantly talking about like how scary it was and how terrible it was, and like you wouldn't believe it, and blah blah blah. And you kind of think, and like there's this whole. And first of all, the Hive are scary. Like everybody else is like not scary. The Hive are scary as hell. Their designs are scary. Like especially the stronger characters. Like. They're creepy. They're weird and creepy and scary and very like
Absolutely.
Terrible. And through all these missions and what you hear from Eris Morn when you're hanging out around her by the tower, you kind of get this impression that Crota's going to be like the be-all end-all badass of the universe. He's not. He's half formed when you fight him. He just stands there, and then you shoot him with a bunch of rockets, and he sits down he kneels down. And then one dude with a thing hits him a bunch of times. Rinse and repeat. You don't even have to go near him.
He's almost so awful that you would think he was broken. He doesn't shoot at you. He has the ability to shoot at you.
He does?
Yeah.
He's got a big sword.
So he has the ability to shoot at you. He doesn't do it. He could run at you and like hit you with your sword.
He doesn't
do it. He just stands there. And then sometimes he'll move to the right. and then you just wait him out. And then when Crota moves back to the middle, then you just hit him a bunch of times. And then sometimes he moves to the left, and you know, whatever. He's just like he's like indifferent to you. And it's very underwhelming.
Yeah.
It's disappointing.
I was very underwhelmed the first time that we beat Crota. Like, I was happy to beat it finally, but I was like, that's dumb. That's it. This is like, I was like, when Crota finally showed up, I'm like, well, he looks interesting, but as an enemy to fight, he's not threatening, and he's not doing anything. He's not attacking me. Like, as long as you don't go right near him, you're fine.
Yeah, and the thing is that with Destiny, once Crota's End came out, what's it called? The Dark Below came out. And you could get to level 32, it predominantly made all of your previous equipment irrelevant. Because until then, all the levels was capped at 30, so all the equipment you had, it can never get better than 30.
And so people got all this crazy, awesome, cool stuff from Vault of Glass. Oh, but now you've got Crota's End, and now
Right.
now you need to get better gear.
So there is no reason for me to run Vault of Glass anymore. I've gotten everything of real relevance out of it. I should just be running Crota's End exclusively, but I don't. Vault of Glass is so wonderful that I run it essentially for fun at this point.
It is fun.
Yeah.
It's also like there's a whole big like lull in the middle of Vault of Glass where it's basically a platformer, and between traveling through the caves and platforming, and like that's when funny stuff happens. Like, the people you're playing with over the mics will just be funny and say funny things and do dumb stuff. And it's like, those aren't the stressful moments. Those are the goofy moments. It's like you have this sort of like this lull before the action happens again. And it's fun. It's a good time.
And also, during that platforming lull is probably the most interesting part of the Vault of Glass. There's this giant chasm that's just rife for exploring. Like, there's little nooks and crannies and hidden platforms and all over the place that you can just hang out in.
And explore.
And, you know, there might not be anything there. There's, you know, big mysteries about whether or not there's still hidden chests in the Vault of Glass that nobody's found and stuff, which I believe there is, by the way. But it's just gorgeous to be around.
And you can definitely tell, based on our conversation here, like, strikes are important in this game. They're smaller missions, and we went over those pretty briefly, but we've spent a significant amount of time talking about the raids. The raids are like where it's at. And another interesting, actually, like while we're talking about strikes and raids, another thing that's interesting is you can you earn. There's a lot of crap that you earn in this game.
Infinite amount of crap.
Currency, experience, marks, material, guns, ammo, not ammo, armor. There's all these things that you can get. But when you do strikes, you earn, in addition to any items that get dropped, you also earn marks, which are sort of one form of currency with some of the people in the game. You can only earn 100 marks a week doing strikes. So they put limits on everything. There's a weekly Nightfall strike, which is level 30. It's more difficult.
Very difficult.
They add all kinds of modifiers, like the skulls from Halo. There's a weekly heroic strike, which isn't quite as difficult. There's a daily story mission, which you get different stuff for doing that. And then there's also the raids, and which have easy mode and hard mode, or normal and hard. And all of that stuff I just mentioned, you can only do it once a week.
You can do it more, but you get no rewards for doing it
you
more.
get no loot drop.
So if you really love doing Nightfall strikes, then have at it, kids. But you're not going to get anything out of the first one.
Yep. And so that's interesting, too. It's like they only want you to play so much.
Yeah.
Which is kind of bizarre. I still haven't quite figured out what their angle is on that.
I think we'll get to that next time.
Yeah, that's fine.
In case we didn't actually mention this. This is probably going to be a two-parter. Today we're just sort of going over general things about Destiny. Next episode, we're going to get into the real nitty-gritty.
This is the meat and potatoes. Next time's going to be the seasoning.
That's really going to be us whining about the little things that bug us about Destiny. We're hoping this one comes off as showing how much we genuinely love this game. I can't tell you the last time I went so hard on a game. There are games that Dan and I have played more. Battlefield 3, for instance. Borderlands, the first Borderlands, maybe the second Borderlands. But I haven't cared so much about a game like this, honestly, since Halo 3. I went really hard on Halo 3, to the point where like I checked online, I checked on Bungie.net to see where my rank was multiplayer-wise, stuff like that. This is a next level obsession with me. And it's because deep down the bones of this game are something exceptional.
But there's something about this game, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I haven't quite been able to quantify it. When I watch like critiques online, like there's a lot of really funny critiques I've seen where people do like an 8-minute YouTube video and they rip the game apart, and it's like they make nothing but valid points. Like I can't argue with them, but I feel differently. They walk away from it thinking, meh, Destiny. And I think, oh man, this is such a great game. I wish it was better, but it's such a great game.
Right.
And I can't put my finger exactly on why I'm viewing it that way and these people are viewing it another. And maybe it's just my experience and my story interests, because this is like an interesting science fiction adventure.
The world they've created is interesting.
And it has potential.
I mean, I think so many people were upset with the story because it leaves you wanting so much more. It's like, wow, this is so fascinating. What's that thing? What's that thing? I don't know what this is. I want to find out. And they don't tell you. The world they've crafted is great and intriguing and is asking to be explored. And they sort of just don't let you.
Yeah, you can't.
But there is this inherently good storytelling in it. When you walk around old Russia, you can tell exactly what happened. Like, there's abandoned spacecraft, there's, destroyed buildings and all this stuff. It was like, this was a once thriving civilization, and they tried to get out and they couldn't. They didn't have time to get out. And it feels fun and exciting to be in that.
It's also, it's kind of a bizarre setting, too. You're like this post-apocalyptic, hellscape, but you have some advanced technology and some stuff isn't. And it's like you've basically cobbled a little bit of civilization back together, but it still sucks. And you're just trying to do your best.
Yeah. So, are there any other sort of points you want to make before any broad scale points you want to make before we get going?
Yeah, do we want to talk about these at all? I would like
we
to.
Should.
Okay. I didn't. You had on the list, but it looked like we were wrapping up. I didn't know if you wanted to.
Yeah.
This game is breathtakingly beautiful. Like, I've had moments in Halo games where I look out and I'm like, damn, this is a beautiful game. It does not even compare to the amount of times I've done that in this game. The sky is beautiful. The landscapes in the distance are beautiful. Everything looks like, when you see concept art for something and you think that looks incredible, everything in Destiny looks like that. Like, the landscapes just go on and are so expansive and beautiful and breathtaking, and every place looks different. And aside from looking off at the beautiful vistas, the game itself, the stuff you're playing in, everything is crisp and beautiful and detailed and tangible, and it's breathtaking.
Yeah,
this game is incredible in that department. This game is, bar none, it is amazing. And
there's a lot of invisible walls in this game, which is
those suck.
Frustrating. However, sometimes you can get out of them, or sometimes they just didn't put them in, or maybe they intentionally didn't put them in, and you can just go for miles, and it's impressive how many assets they've actually that are real in the game. You would assume that all of it is done with some maybe computer hocus pocus where none of it's real. When you get there, you'll fall right through it or whatever. We were exploring the Vault of Glass the other day, and Dan got so far out into it, you would have assumed that was all fake. That was fake landscape and stuff.
You can't. During the regular portion in the area where we were, it's this big, huge, basically a canyon, where there's these platforms that you jump from one to the other, get to the other side, and you continue on. And you go to the end of the vault. But there's all this stuff around the sides of the canyon that you can get to, but you can't even regularly really see it because there's so much smoke and fog.
Yeah, you don't even know it's there until you get there.
Yeah, and it's you just keep going until you can't go anymore.
It's a real impressive feat of game making. And I don't know what those things... what they called maybe skyboxes or something. I heard a real term for it the other day. I don't remember what it was. Whatever games use to create that sort of like dome around you that is the sky, nobody does that better than Bungie. They were doing marvelous things with Halo Reach back on the 360, and this is just like some next level stuff. And just as a whole, the game feels very good. It feels very tangible. Like you could reach out and touch the flora and the fauna and stuff.
There are moments where it feels like a video game when there's like a cave where guys spawn out of that you can't go into. Like that really ticks me off. But for the most part, it doesn't feel video gamey. It doesn't feel like a level. It feels like you're inside of like real architecture and a real world. And that is also something that completely sucks you in because you don't feel like you're part of something artificial.
Yeah. They've done a real good job building this world. Anything else? I feel like there's so much to talk about.
There is, but I feel like this is a pretty good stopping point.
Yeah, I think we didn't talk about the Crucible at all. Do you want to go over that right now? Or we can get back to that next time. We don't have tremendous amount to say about it.
I want to leave it as a cliffhanger.
Oh.
Dun dun dun.
I'm so excited to come back next week because they're going to talk about the Crucible. Come back next week. We'll talk about the Crucible. You're really excited about it right now. I can feel it.
And a handful of other things.
Yeah, and we're gonna go into the nitty gritty. There's a lot of stuff that we want to talk about it, and you guys want to hear about it.
Like we haven't really talked much about weapons, for example, and there's a bunch of really, really cool weapons in this game.
Yeah. So next episode, Destiny Part 2. The one after that, we're gonna have a bit of a change up.
Yep.
I think it's time to talk about this, right?
Sure.
Put it up.
I think that's enough. That's far enough in advance. I think we'll manage to hit the mark.
Yeah. So Dan and I are changing the format of the podcast slightly.
Well, that's not the change. I mean, we're going to do the golf stuff.
Oh, even more changes. I was going to talk about the general change.
Oh, well, that's farther out.
Oh, we don't?
You can talk about it.
I'm going to talk about it. Dan and I are changing up the format of this podcast slightly. There's 2 reasons for this. The first being that 2 weeks is not enough time for us to properly give the attention to the games we're playing for the podcast. With some of those episodes, like the beat 'em up episode and stuff, Dan and I are playing those games for at most 20 minutes, half an hour, because we live 45 minutes away from each other. It's not the easiest thing to, get on the same screen to play some of these games. So we thought perhaps we would give ourselves a little more time and do a month in between game episodes. So we're still going to do it every 2 weeks, but every 2 weeks is going to be a more general topic discussion.
So we'll alternate from like a game episode to video game discussion to a game episode.
Exactly. So it'll be one and then one and the other and then one and the other. Just like Dan just said, I'm saying the same thing, only more confusing.
Good job. It was more confusing.
I'm also excited about this because, in my personal opinion, my favorite episode that we've ever done was the I can't even remember the name of it. What's that episode we did?
Was it Why Do We Like Games?
Why do we like games? Or what we like about games.
Something like that.
Something like that. You guys will know better than us. Should I look it up? No. Why do we like games? That was my favorite episode. And that wasn't, a specific topic. It was just sort of us chatting about games, talking about something we love. And I really want to have more episodes like that. So I think this will facilitate those discussions. And it'll also let us talk much more in depth about the games we are playing. So, next episode, Destiny Part 2. Episode after that, general game discussion. We'll talk about news. I think we're going to talk about video game music. Maybe bring up a few that we both really love. Peril.
Following up after that is going to be Kirby's Dream Course for the Super Nintendo.
Yep.
And you want to get the title correct for this because I'll botch it?
It's Tiger Woods 13. Technically, we'll be playing The Masters, which is a special collector's edition. It just comes with more golf courses.
So we're doing a golf episode.
Yeah, which is going to be weird.
Because it's we've picked the complete opposites. Like, we couldn't get more disparate with these two choices.
Well, at this point, that's like a month out. Month and a half out when we're playing that golf game. Give us feedback. Tell us what you think. If there's a topic you want us to discuss on a general episode, we would love to get some ideas.
Yeah, we're interested in game theory. I mean, look, there's two kinds of people that play video games. There's some that just want to play, just have a good time. They just want to whatever, kill some dudes, whatever. And then like go on with their life. And there's some people that they consider like the philosophical aspects of gaming and the ramifications that it has on our lives and civilization in general, and we want to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Than we have previously. I mean, we've had nuggets here and there in some of these episodes, but I think we could kick it up a notch.
I think we could kick it up a little bit. I'd like that. Awesome. I am killagreg. You can find me at killagreg17.
I'm Dan. You can find me at the Polygon1.
You can find us at Player2, PLAYRTWO.
And you can find us at player2pressstart.com.
And if you want to play Destiny with us, I am Soapmaker17 on the Xbone, and straight up killagreg, no numbers, on my PS4.
And I am Fix Bayonet.
We're always looking for raid partners, so if you're down, let us know. See you next.
And if you're new to Destiny, or you think maybe you want to give it a shot now, you can still get into it.
Yeah, and I'll walk you through it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like send me an invite.
Yeah.
I will play any level with you anytime you want.
If you're a listener and you're thinking about getting into it, we're totally there for you. And if you have questions or whatever else, I mean, we're steeped in this stuff at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it has consumed my life.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Adios.